Yesterday, as you all know, the cases were scheduled for preliminary hearing. During the transport, Mr. Siders fell and had a medical issue that required treatment and assessment. Oblentis Hospital was where he was taken, and it was determined at that point upon some tests that Oblentis did that Mr. Siders Sr. has a serious medical condition that requires specialized care in a hospital outside of this area.
On Saturday night, July 11th, a reporter in Ohio sat down in front of a camera and said something the state has not yet answered. She has the birth certificates. Her name is Angenette Levy. She has covered this case longer and closer than any journalist in America. And what she told her audience this weekend quietly breaks the story everyone thinks they already know. The 16 children found in a house in Vinton County were not invisible. Some of them have birth certificates she has now obtained. Those certificates say the children were born in hospitals. Hospitals mean records. Records mean the system met this family. Not once, but again and again, across 17 years. And there is more. Levy says multiple sources have now told her that Children's Services in another Ohio county had contact with this family over these children, and that the family moved to keep them from being taken. When she emailed that agency to ask, the agency stopped answering. Before we go further, this case involves the endangerment of children, and some of what officials have described is disturbing. We will not be showing the children or detailing their conditions, but if this subject is difficult for you, take care while watching. If you're new here, you're inside Quiet Record. Verified reporting, named experts, no invented forensics. Subscribe if that's the coverage you want. Drop a comment with the city and country you're watching from, and to everyone who has shared, liked, and commented since our first episode on this case, you are the reason it is still being asked about. Thank you, because tonight's question is no longer how 16 children stayed hidden, it's how the state saw them, and still lost them. To understand what follows, you have to understand where it happened, because the place is not a backdrop in this case. It is a factor. Vinton County sits in the southeast corner of Ohio, in the foothills of Appalachia. It is the least populous of Ohio's 88 counties, fewer than 13,000 people, and by several measures it may be the poorest. It is genuinely beautiful country. Green hills, lakes, forest. It is also a county with one small prosecutor's office, a sheriff's department that routinely calls in the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation for major cases because it has to, and a grand jury that convenes only every other month. Franklin County, 70 miles north, runs grand juries practically every day. Vinton runs 6 a year. Mark Weaver, a former Ohio Deputy Attorney General who has prosecuted cases in this exact region, put the context plainly in an interview with Law and Crime. A family with 7, 8, 9 children is already unusual in Appalachia. A family with 16, confined to a house of 1,300 square feet in a village so small that everyone recognizes everyone, that should have been impossible to miss. And yet, on the morning of Tuesday, June 30th, when Vinton County Sheriff's deputies and agents from Ohio BCI arrived at a rented home on Omer Road in the village of Hamden, they were not there for children at all. They were executing a search warrant in a separate investigation, a felony investigation, according to Levy's reporting, and one the public still knows nothing about, because the warrant and its supporting affidavit are sealed. Levy obtained the sealing order itself and described it as the most bare she has ever seen. It does not even list the address of the house it seals. Inside, investigators say they found 16 children, ages 17 months to 18 years, most of them in a single room estimated at 12 feet by 12 feet, in conditions Attorney General Andy Wilson would later call the worst scene of his career. 7 children went to Columbus area hospitals that day. 2 were care-flighted. 1 was intubated. Wilson said publicly that if the warrant had come 24 hours later, the state might have been dealing with deaths. Every one of the children has since been treated, released, and placed in foster care. 4 adults were charged. Gary Siders Sr., 73, Christina Siders, 67, who goes by Lynn, their son, Gary Siders Jr., 36, and his wife, Elizabeth Siders, 33. 16 counts of endangering children each, second-degree felonies, each carrying a minimum of 2 to 8 years, a maximum of 12, and a $15,000 fine. 64 felony counts across the household. All 4 pleaded not guilty. Bond was set at $300,000 apiece. And this past week, All four waived their preliminary hearings, sending the case toward that every other month grand jury. That is the story as the world learned it in the first week. What Levy put on the record this weekend is the part the world has not caught up to yet. Start with the number everyone has wrong. It is not 16 pregnancies. Court records listing the children's birth dates, and the certificates Levy has now obtained for some of them, show that Elizabeth Siders gave birth to 18 children between 2008 and 2025. Her last 3 pregnancies were all twins. The set born on November 20th, 2022, 2 girls named Bailey and Faith were conjoined, delivered prematurely at around 24 weeks, sharing vital organs. They died the same day they were born. They were born at a hospital. Hold on to that fact, because it quietly changes the architecture of this entire case. A conjoined twin delivery at 24 weeks is not a quiet medical event. It is a high-risk pregnancy flagged in advance. A specialized delivery team, neonatal intensive care, grief counseling paperwork, death certificates. It generates a file. And it was not the only hospital contact. Levy says the births she holds documentation for happened in hospitals, plural. Her working inference, which she is careful to label as her inference and not a finding, is that a family this poor delivering in hospitals was almost certainly enrolled in Ohio Medicaid, the state's safety net insurance, which would mean enrollment paperwork, annual renewals, claims filed for every delivery. She has asked the state of Ohio directly what benefits this family received. As of Saturday night, she says she has not gotten a straight answer. So the paper trail that the first wave of coverage said did not exist, it exists. The question this episode has to answer is what every system that held a piece of it did with what it knew. Before we get there, 2 minutes on what happened inside the case itself this week. Because it was not a quiet week. Gary Siders Sr. is no longer in jail. On the way to court for his preliminary hearing, the 73-year-old fell and was injured. Deputies took him to Obelness Hospital to be checked, and doctors found something worse than a fall. A serious medical condition requiring specialized treatment at a facility outside the region. What happened next is almost unheard of in a case of this profile. The prosecution agreed to release him on his own recognizance. No bail money at all. The stated reason was not mercy. Under Ohio practice, a county pays the medical bills of the people held in its jail. Only convicted prisoners become the state's expense. Prosecutor William Archer said it plainly. This man's medical care could potentially bankrupt Vinton County, and the county was not going to put that burden on its taxpayers. So the oldest defendant in Ohio's most watched abuse case was released because the county could not afford to hold him. As of this weekend, he remains hospitalized. If discharged, he goes on to GPS monitoring, and Archer has been explicit that he is not considered a threat to the public. His attorney, Dorian Baum, finally met his client this week, after a holiday weekend during which the regional jail barred all visitors, including lawyers. What he saw in that meeting sent him straight to the courthouse with 2 motions, one requesting a competency evaluation, one requesting an evaluation under Ohio's not guilty by reason of insanity statute. Baum described what he observed to Levy in a second interview. Significant mobility problems. The wheelchair may be full-time. There are hip issues, difficulty hearing, and a confusion so basic that his client could not discuss the legal process or identify what anyone's role in it was. Baum was careful. He is not a doctor and said so. But he reached for the comparison most families would recognize, a person whose mental faculties have decompensated the way dementia decompensates them. Someone who may genuinely not understand what is happening around him, or why. His summary of his own client was not the language of a man building a loophole. He called him a sad and sympathetic character. The court has ordered the evaluations, and under Ohio law the sequence is rigid. First, is he competent to stand trial? Can he understand the proceedings and assist his own defense? If not, can he be restored to competency through treatment? If he cannot be restored, he cannot be prosecuted at all. And only if he is competent does the second question open, whether, at the relevant time, he was capable of understanding the wrongfulness of what was happening in that house. Sit with what that means for a moment. 1/4 of this case may never see a courtroom. If you have been with this case since our first episode, this is the moment I ask for the one thing that keeps this coverage alive. This channel committed to following the Ohio 16 past the shock week, into the motions, the evaluations, the grand jury. the records requests that get answered, and the ones that don't. That kind of coverage only keeps appearing in your feed if you subscribe. If you would want a stranger tracking the paperwork this closely for children in your county, do it for these 16. One tap. Then stay with me. Because the reporter at the center of this story has just become part of it. Angenette Levy hosts Crime Fix on the Law and Crime Network. She is from Ohio. She went to summer camp in Vinton County as a kid, which is the kind of detail that matters because she knows exactly what this region is and is not. She has covered this case across 4 Crime Fix episodes, interviewed defense counsel twice in 1 week, and appeared as the expert guest on Law and Crime's Scandal program. And she has done something the rest of the national press has not. She pulled the records herself. She ran the marriage search in Mason County, West Virginia, and confirmed the date, March 31, 2008. She did the arithmetic on the birth dates in the charging documents. She obtained birth certificates. When she corrects the record, the correction holds. So note 2 of them. First, Elizabeth Siders was 15 years old at her marriage, not 13, as viral posts keep claiming. Still a child. Still a marriage that no court in Ohio would have permitted, which is exactly why it happened across the state line in West Virginia, where parental approval made it legal. But 15, not 13, and in a case this contested, precision is credibility. Second, Levy warned on Saturday that fabricated photographs of the house's interior are circulating online right now. If you have seen images claiming to show the inside of that room, you have very likely seen an invention. This channel will not show you the interior of that house, because no verified interior image has been published. And Levy is the source of the single most consequential claim in this case, the one this episode turns on. She reported it at least twice on Crime Fix this week, and she repeated it Saturday night with firmer footing. Children's Services in one Ohio county, not Vinton, another county, had contact with Gary Jr. and Elizabeth at some point in the past over these children, and the family, she was told, picked up and left with the kids out of fear that the children would be removed. She says this did not come from one person. It came from multiple sources. Then she emailed the agency in question, and the agency is not responding to her inquiries. Be precise about what that silence is and is not. An agency that never met this family has an easy answer available, and it is 1 sentence long. We have no record of them. Silence is not that sentence. Silence is also not proof. Agencies have lawyers, open investigations freeze communications, and a county office in the middle of the biggest case in its history may simply have been told to route every inquiry through the state. But it means the sentence Jeremy Russell posted to Facebook on the day of the rescue, "The state knows something," is no longer just a grieving brother's accusation. It is a documented, multi-sourced reporting thread that a state agency is currently declining to address. Now put the whole paper trail on the table. Because this is where the case stops being a story about a family hiding and becomes a story about a system. The children were born in hospitals. That is on paper now. The family, by Levy's inference, was likely enrolled in Medicaid, which would mean the state processed claims for this household for years. People in the community have described Elizabeth coming to a local diaper bank once a week, sometimes trying to come more than once, which means a charity saw her regularly for years. Employees at the Dollar General in Hamden told reporters the family were regulars in almost every night just before closing, buying water, vegetable oil, sometimes sugar. Staff noticed enough to offer the family donated clothes and hygiene products. They say they never saw those items used. One employee, Ariel Gutierrez, said something after the arrest that belongs in the permanent record of this case. "I'm just sorry to the children, and I'm sorry that I should have said something sooner." Keep going. The house on Omer Road had running water, working plumbing, and active trash service. The utilities existed and functioned. Whatever the conditions inside were, they were not an infrastructure failure. Christina Siders' name was on the utility accounts. The property tax was current, and a children's services agency in another county, per Levy's multiple sources, had already met this family at least once. Count them: hospitals, Medicaid, a diaper bank, a retail store whose staff were concerned enough to offer help, utility companies, a county tax office, a child welfare agency. 7 points of contact between this household and the outside world, sustained across 17 years. while the Vinton County Local School District confirms that not one of the 16 children was ever enrolled in school, and no pediatrician, teacher, or nurse ever filed the report that Ohio law was waiting for. Here is the mechanism, and it is worth 30 seconds of your full attention, because it is the actual answer to the question everyone keeps asking. Ohio Revised Code 2151-421, the mandatory reporter statute, obligates a specific list of professionals to report suspected abuse or neglect. Teachers, doctors, nurses, dentists, social workers, child care workers. Hospitals are full of mandatory reporters, and the Siders' children were born in hospitals. So why did 18 hospital births never trigger anything? Because a birth is not a report. A mandatory reporter must suspect abuse or neglect of the child in front of them. A newborn delivered at a hospital is examined, treated, discharged, and a newborn by definition carries no history yet. The statute activates on evidence, and a day-old child presents none. The family goes home, and if the child never comes back, no well child visits, no vaccinations on file, no school enrollment, no emergency room, then the mandatory reporter system never gets a second look. Every one of those 18 births was a door the system held open for a moment. Every time, it swung shut, and nothing in Ohio law required anyone to notice that the same family kept leaving through it. The clerks at the diaper bank and the Dollar General? Not mandatory reporters. The utility company? Not a mandatory reporter. The tax office? No. The one entity on that list with an actual legal mandate, the Children's Services Agency that Levy's sources say met this family, is the one that is not answering her emails. Ask yourself the question this forces. If a family in your county appeared in hospital records 18 times, drew charity weekly, and had a child welfare file open in a neighboring county, would any system you know of connect those three facts? In Ohio, in most states, the honest answer is no. There is no cross-check between birth records and school enrollment. There is no audit that flags a household with children on paper and no children in any classroom. The statewide child welfare database only holds what gets reported into it, and when a family crosses a county line, the receiving county starts from zero unless someone thinks to look. There is a precedent for this exact failure, and it is the one every outlet keeps reaching for. So let's use it correctly. In January 2018, in Paris, California, 13 siblings were rescued from the home of David and Louise Turpin, who are now serving life sentences. The comparison usually stops at the surface. Big family, prolonged concealment, shocked neighbors. The instructive part is underneath. The Turpins avoided the systems. Homeschooling on paper, minimal medical contact, a family engineered to generate no records. California's mandatory reporters never filed on them, because California's mandatory reporters never met them. The Siders case is the darker inversion. This family did not avoid the systems. They were in them. In the hospitals, likely in Medicaid, briefly in a child welfare office, and the outcome was the same. After Paris, Riverside County reviewed and reformed its child welfare processes because sustained public attention forced it to. That is the precedent that matters here, and it is not about the crime. It is about what attention did afterward. Which brings us to the person the internet cannot stop arguing about, and the one this channel is going to handle more carefully than the internet does. Elizabeth. Her attorney, Thomas Stolley, has filed a motion asking the court to release her without any cash bail. The grounds: she is indigent, no ability to post $1 of the $300,000 bond, she has no criminal history, no failures to appear, and she has agreed to GPS monitoring and full supervision. Stolley says her first question when they met was about her children, that she wants to be reunited with them, and understands that will never happen unless she goes through this process exactly by the rules. That she told him children are a blessing from God, and that she always wanted a big family. Her preliminary hearing waiver carried a detail the other three defendants' waivers did not, a reservation of her right to demand that hearing later. Her defense is keeping a door open, and Stolley has said something no other lawyer in this case has said about their own client. His office is still investigating whether Elizabeth Siders is herself a victim, even as he acknowledges that she does not necessarily describe herself as one. Put that question to the prosecutor, and you get the sharpest 6 words on the record so far. According to her attorney, she's not a victim. Archer said it flatly, and Levy read it the way most courtroom observers did. as a preview of how the state intends to answer that bail motion. As of this recording, the prosecution has not yet filed its response. That hearing, when it comes, will be the first real courtroom fight of this case. Her own family cannot agree on what she is. Her brother Jeremy Russell, the man whose June 30th Facebook post anchored our first episode, posted again on July 5th, and the tone had turned. Slap on the wrist, he predicted. You cannot be charged for ignorance. His sister and her husband, he wrote, did their best to their IQ, and the man of the house is responsible at most. Read that arc carefully. The same brother who says the state was warned is now arguing his sister should not carry the weight and pointing it instead at her husband. An uncle-in-law told local station WK13 the opposite origin story, that Elizabeth's own childhood home was a bad one, and that she escaped into the Siders household, which he said was back then a normal American home. And there is the question Levy keeps circling without asserting. Christina Siders' social media is dense with crosses, the Lord's Prayer, images of Jesus. Is there a religious component to a family that never stopped growing and never entered a school? Nobody on the record knows. On this channel, it stays a question. But here is what makes this family story stranger than the version going viral. And on Saturday, Levy showed the receipts. A photograph from Christina's own Facebook, posted in 2023, shows her and Gary Sr. clean, dressed, put together, by every visual measure an ordinary older couple. Levy believes she has seen another such photo from within the last year. Elizabeth's mother, Lori, posted a birthday photo of her daughter in 2020. Blonde, healthy, smiling into the camera. A young woman anyone would walk past without a second thought. Set those images beside the booking photos from 2 weeks ago. The exhaustion, the collapse, and the same conclusion forces itself on you that forced itself on Levy. Something happened to this family, and by the look of the photographs, something recent. Whatever gave way inside that house may not be a 20-year descent. It may be a 2 or 3 year one. And consider, as context, never as excuse, what those years contained for one person in particular. 18 pregnancies in 17 years. The last 3, all twins. 1 pair conjoined, carried to 24 weeks, delivered in a hospital, and buried the same day. Whatever a jury eventually decides Elizabeth Siders is, perpetrator, victim, or something the law has no clean word for, the physical and psychological load of that timeline belongs in any honest account of how a household arrives at June 30th. Even the children's own digital traces refuse to resolve the picture. Levy located social media accounts for at least 3 of the older children. The profile pictures are a cat, anime characters, never their own faces. There are a few short posts, screen-grabbed messages with an overseas internet boyfriend of the oldest girl, a clip in which one of them speaks a single word. The defense holds this up as proof the state's portrait is overblown. Trapped, illiterate children, Baum argues, do not run Snapchat accounts. Maybe. Or maybe children with phones and no schooling built the only identities available to them, faceless ones. Voice-to-text exists. One word on video is not literacy, and an anime avatar is not freedom. The honest answer is that the literacy question, like almost everything in this case, is not resolved. It is pending. And the thing that would resolve most of it, the body camera footage from June 30th, exists. Levy has requested it. With 16 minors in the frame, it will be redacted if it is released at all, which means the fullest record of what that room actually was may never be public. So let's return to the sentence this coverage started with and weigh what stands behind it now. The state knows something. When Jeremy Russell wrote those 5 words on the day of the rescue, they were one man's claim. Undocumented, unanswered, easy to dismiss as grief-talking. 2 weeks later, line up what stands behind them. Birth certificates in a reporter's hands. Hospital deliveries on paper. A probable Medicaid file the state will not discuss. Multiple sources describing a prior Children's Services contact, and the agency in question going silent on the one reporter asking about it. A sealed warrant inside a sealing order, so minimal it names no address. Body camera footage that exists and may never be seen. A promised systemic review whose scope just expanded from "how did no one see them" to "why did seeing them change nothing?" Every one of those is a piece of paper, and every one of them is currently a door the public cannot open. The machinery assembling on the other side of those doors is considerable. 3 prosecutors now share this case. William Archer, an assistant attorney general from Andy Wilson's office, and the elected prosecutor of a neighboring county brought in as special counsel, an extraordinary concentration of experience for the least populous county in the state, and a signal of the indictment the state expects to seek. The grand jury is expected within weeks. More charges remain possible, including, the prosecution has noted, from the original sealed investigation that brought deputies to Omer Road in the first place. Gary Jr. still separately faces 4 misdemeanor counts of public indecency from late May. That hearing has been postponed once already. And on one point every party agrees, which is worth repeating because the rumor will not die. Archer has stated flatly that this is not a human trafficking case. Andy Wilson, a former county prosecutor who helped try the Pike County massacre case before Governor DeWine appointed him Attorney General in June, has committed the state to a full review of how this went undetected. Understand what that review now has to do. It does not have to explain how a family evaded every system in Ohio. The records prove they didn't. It has to explain how a family inside several of those systems, hospitals, insurance, charity, a child welfare office, was never once flagged by any of them. And it has to say, on the record, what that other county's Children's Services office knew, and when, and what happened to the file. So here, as of this recording, is the honest ledger. What is true? 16 children rescued on June 30th, all treated, all released from hospitals, all placed in foster care. 4 adults charged with 16 second-degree felony counts each, all presumed innocent, all pleaded not guilty, all 4 waived preliminary hearings. Gary Siders Sr., hospitalized with a serious condition, released on his own recognizance because his care could bankrupt the county, now awaiting court-ordered competency and insanity evaluations. Elizabeth Siders' motion for release without cash bail, pending and unanswered by the state. 18 documented births between 2008 and 2025, the last 3 pregnancies all twins. 2 conjoined daughters, Bailey and Faith, who lived one day. Birth certificates obtained by a reporter showing hospital deliveries. A 3-prosecutor team and a grand jury expected within weeks. What is theory? Why the original warrant was issued, and against whom? Whether the prior Children's Services contact will be confirmed in writing. Whether Elizabeth Siders is defendant, victim, or both. Whether a religious conviction shaped this family, and every psychological explanation currently trending in comment sections, including on videos with far more views than this one. What is invention? The interior photographs circulating online, flagged as fabricated by the reporter who knows this case best. The claim that Elizabeth was 13 at her marriage, the record says 15, and any account that names, shows, or claims to describe the children individually, their identities are protected by law. If a channel shows you those things, ask that channel where it came from. If you suspect a child in your own community is being neglected or abused, Ohio's hotline is 1-855-642-4453. You do not have to be a mandatory reporter. You do not have to be certain, and you do not have to prove anything. Reasonable suspicion is enough. The call is the whole job. The rest belongs to the state. And if the Dollar General clerk in Hamden teaches this case anything, it is the cost of the call not made. I'm sorry I should have said something sooner. Do not be the person who says that sentence next year. One last thing before you go. Somewhere in a county office in Ohio, there is, if the reporting holds, a file with this family's name on it, dated years before June 30th. Right now, the only pressure on that file is one reporter's unanswered emails and whatever attention the public keeps supplied. Emails are easy to ignore. Audiences are not. 5 months from now, Ohio's promised review will either have named the county, produced the file, and closed the gap that let 18 hospital births pass without a single flag, or it will have produced a report that names nothing and a news cycle that moved on. Which of those happens is not decided in Columbus. It is decided by whether the question is still being asked when the cameras leave Vinton County. Subscribing to this channel is how you keep asking it, through the grand jury, through the evaluations, through the bail fight over Elizabeth Siders, all the way to the day someone either produces that file or explains why it does not exist. If 16 children who were seen by hospitals, seen by a charity, seen by a caseworker, and still ended up in that room matter to you past this week, subscribe, and be here when the answer comes. The records exist. Someone read them. The only question left is who. I'll see you on the next one.